Welcome to City Scene with Mayor Mike Cahill. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski. And Your Honor, we're sitting here. It's March 27th, 2020, and we're in the middle of a global pandemic, which certainly will affect, certainly temporarily, and even for some people permanently, their way of life, maybe hundreds of millions of people around the globe. As you can see, for our viewers can see that we're doing our social distancing as best we can. So we're going to talk about the effects of this pandemic and what we are actually facing here in the city of Beverly. Sure. Your Honor, let's talk about a couple. We're going to get into some very specific things, but we can also talk about generally speaking. But I imagine that based upon the advice of our federal government and our state government about all the different protocols and safe distancing and so forth, that we are following that. Are there any specific Beverly things that you've incorporated? I know you've talked about staggered food shopping and food shopping for services. Yeah. You might want to say a little bit about that.
So sure. I mean, this has happened very quickly, right? I mean, culturally, we've kind of turned upside down in a span of about 10 days, and with the recognition that we've got this COVID-19 virus. It's a virus that, since we haven't had it before, there's no vaccine, not sure what the right antiviral treatments are, and we haven't had the chance to build up immunities as people. So it's critically important that we together stay apart. This is really about physically staying apart to slow the spread of the virus, to allow our healthcare system to get up to speed in some ways, and to ensure that they don't get overwhelmed with too many cases of people who present severe symptoms all at once. Right? We know that, a lot of people will get this and not have severe symptoms.
Or any.
Fewer will have severe symptoms, but we've got to do everything in our power to slow the spread and spread it out. Right? I mean, slow it down so that not everybody gets sick at once. And, there are some statistics out there that are coming from the federal level around the fact that somewhere between 40 and 60% of the country is going to get the virus over the course of this year. The key is that, let's try to keep it down to the lower end of that scale with our social distancing, and let's try to slow it down so that it doesn't overwhelm our healthcare workers in our capacity. Yeah. So you asked about some specifics in Beverly?
Yeah, let's talk about the shopping, and also let's talk about the capacity of our hospitals here in Beverly, and you can tell us about that as well.
Yeah. So, no, Leahy has been doing a great job at Beverly Hospital, and they've got a certain capacity ICU right now and ventilators, and they're working to ramp that up, as every hospital is. So as far as what we're doing with shopping, we just came up with the idea of saying, let's not everybody be going in and out of the stores every day. I think there was some kind of panic buying initially.
Sure.
And hopefully that's kind of settled down. What we're asking people to do is, based on where you live, you can shop 2 different days during the week, and then we're leaving Tuesday as a day that anybody can go if they really need to, if there's something to pick up. But we're asking people who live in wards 1 and 2 to go on Wednesdays and Saturdays.
Okay.
People who live in wards 3 and 4 to go Thursdays and Sundays, and people living in wards 5 and 6 to go Fridays and Mondays. Mm-hmm. We put that all over all of our social media sites, and we pushed it out. I've done a couple phone calls on it, and it's voluntary. But the more people who can adhere to it, the more we'll kind of spread out the trips to the store, and there'll be more possible for people to keep a distance in the stores. It'll be a way that we can slow the spread, that we can keep our grocery store employees healthy. We can keep ourselves healthy as we go in to do our shopping. So that's the goal. Now, we also worked with the grocery market owners in Beverly, and then the governor came out the other day and really mandated it, that everybody has at least an hour a day for seniors only.
Right.
And so each of our stores, by that I mean Henry's, Shaw's, Stop and Shop, and Whole Foods, the larger grocery markets, they each have designated senior-only hours at the beginning of the day. They all have their own hours. Depending on where you do your shopping regularly, you can check with them. We also are putting signage up at the doors of each of the stores as well, and we'll update our website and our other platforms for people to go and find that. Mm-hmm. But really, the key is to just be thoughtful about when you need to go out and shop, and try to minimize the number of people in the stores at any given time.
Sure, and I think that since a lot of people are not going to work, that makes it a lot easier because people say, gee, I have to go on the weekend because I work during the week. So that sort of excuse is minimized. Now, we talked a little bit about hospitals. Let's get back to that now. Is there, we're hearing over the national news about hospitals like in New York City that are just getting overwhelmed. What's the situation in Beverly's hospitals? Are we at a critical point yet, or do we expect to be from what you've heard from the administrators of the hospitals?
Well, the effort, I mean, you hear a lot on the national news, right? The effort that's coming from the states, from the governors to the federal level, from mayors and town managers to the governors, it's the same message. We all collectively in this country, we need more ICU beds, we need more ventilators, and that's been part of the push, is to get those manufactured, get those out, to the community hospitals all over the country. We do fear that if our social distancing efforts aren't successful, that we're going to have people who are going to be in hospitals with severe symptoms who won't be able to get the life-saving treatment they need. That's why it's so important that A, we do our part locally, and B, that the right things happen, up the chain, right to the federal level.
Yeah, I mean, we're hearing on the national news of some potential dreadful scenarios where hospital personnel that don't have enough respirators have to make a life and death decision as to which patient will get the respirator and which patient will not. What a situation!
It's been happening in northern Italy for the last few weeks already.
Yeah,
it's horribly tragic. It is.
Yeah. Now, Your Honor, you mentioned personal protection equipment, the so-called PPE. Now, if people have a stock for whatever reason, if people have some, is there a method, or has the city set something up where they can actually donate these? And what would be the collection point, or how should they go about that?
Thank you for that. We put out an ask last week for anybody who has N95 masks, because the hospital has a need for them. As do our public safety first responders, police, fire, and ambulance. So the response was fantastic. So many people have reached out by phone, by email to say, I have 3 or 5 or 10 or 25 N95 masks that are unused. Can I donate them? And so what we've done is we've set up a couple of boxes in the back foyer at City Hall. If you park in the back lot at City Hall and come through that first door, the outside door, we have a box set up, and we take those and we get them to where they're needed, to the hospital, to our first responders. It's rubber gloves, it's masks. Trying to think what else.
The dresses, the
gowns, sure. Gowns, I mean, all personal protective equipment is in too short supply and needed. So anybody who has something to donate, they can email me at mayorcahill@beverlyma.gov. They can call City Hall when we're open. I'm sorry, we're not open to the public, but we're open to receive calls during regular hours at 978-921-6000, and maybe you can share some of those graphics as well.
We will put those numbers on. Now, how does a person know? If I have a mask laying around in a drawer or a box, how do I know it's an N95? Does it say on the packaging? I know I sometimes buy those masks for painting from a hardware store that kind of fit around here. Yeah.
So, I mean, if it's in the packaging, it's easy to see exactly. If you're not sure, then donate it. And if our folks can't use them, they can't use them. But, better to get them in their hands. And right now they're looking for the the right kind of equipment. There may come a point where they rely on things that are less than optimal as need be as well. Well, you did that very well. You coughed into your elbow.
Cough into the elbow, yes. Well, I have to tell our viewers that I have seasonal hay fever, and this is the time of year, right at the end of March, beginning of April, is when it usually coughs up, no pun intended. Mm-hmm. But, now...
let me touch on the playgrounds a bit.
Because please do.
We had to close the playgrounds, and nobody wanted to do that. What we closed were the play structures and the courts, because if you have your child on a play structure and they're climbing around on it, then other children are touching all the same pieces of that equipment. If we left the basketball and tennis courts open, everybody's touching the same tennis ball and basketball. If you're playing a game like basketball, if you're out on the field playing touch football or frisbee, you're touching the same objects. You're also in close contact, and that's the stuff that can't happen right now. It's not safe, because we're seeing that the virus is being spread by contact, by touch, by the droplets if somebody were to cough or sneeze, and it's also being spread by people who are not yet symptomatic. Yeah. So nobody wanted to take these steps, but we've had to, and we really need people to respect that. Yeah. And I would say that the response in Beverly has been great. Nothing we do will work perfectly, but everything we try can make a difference and keep more people healthy and slow the spread of the virus. And that's why we're doing it.
Yeah. And I think as far as getting exercise, you say stay away from playgrounds and playground equipment and such because of what you just mentioned. But I think we're fortunate here in this area because there are a lot of areas like the trustees' properties, Ravenswood and Bradley Palmer, Appleton, where people can go out into the woods. I know we have dogs and we walk the dogs, and so you can go through the woods and you can be 20, 30, 50 feet away from anybody else there. We're kind of fortunate that you can do that.
We absolutely are. And the parks themselves are not closed. It's just the activities that we're concerned with. If you want to take a stroll down through Lynch Park or down across the high school, and you're going to be 6 feet away from anybody, and you're not sharing, objects and touching the same surfaces, people need to get out and breathe fresh air, right? But it's got to be in their own space. We see a lot of people out walking. If it's an immediate family unit and you all living within the same house under the same roof, those are the folks that that you can be in close contact with. That's your family.
Right.
But if you go out for a walk with a friend, stay 6 feet apart. Yeah. I see people walking side by side and chatting, and they somehow think that it's... Yeah. But the reality is you just don't know who has been infected with the virus. Yeah. And so you don't know whether you might be giving it to somebody or they might be giving it to you. Yeah. So it's really critical to keep that physical distance as we're trying to get out and keep our sanity. Yeah. That's a strong word. Yeah. As we're trying to stay, emotionally in a good place by getting out and being in the open air.
Right. And I think it bears repeating and emphasizing, Your Honor, that, as you point out, you may be asymptomatic, which means that you don't show symptoms. Right. But you could be affected and eventually show symptoms. But you can also be asymptomatic and never show symptoms. Right. So during that period, you could infect, you won't show any symptoms, but you'll affect somebody else who will be affected by it. So it's a kind of a catch-22, but you really have to stand by these protocols and keep your distances and do all the things that we are recommending to the public.
It's a great point. The infectious disease experts are saying that as much as 80% of people who get infected will not show symptoms at any time. Yeah. So it is so important to just keep our distance from each other. This isn't forever. Yeah. This is for now. Yeah. And the for now is for a while still. It's going to take 2 to 3 months of this.
Well, as they say, as the scientists on the television have been telling us, there's this curve. And as long as the curve keeps growing, we're going to have to keep these procedures in effect. Mm-hmm. But they're looking for when those curves top off and flatten out and come back down. That means there's no new cases happening, and then they'll decide how much to let off on the restrictions and the protocols that we've been following. But we're not near those points yet. Now, let me ask you, Mike. We have FEMA here in Beverly, Federal Emergency Management Authority, is it, or so?
Well, we actually are home to the Massachusetts Task Force, which is one of 20 some odd federally funded disaster groups. So they're housed out at Beverly Airport, next to the airport,
Right.
And they are a resource. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so for moving equipment or to what kind of permission would you need? Would that have to come from the governor or from the feds to use their resources?
I mean, we're tracking that to a certain extent. It's through FEMA.
Yeah.
At the same time, the director is employed by the federal government and in part employed by the city, and they are able to make some of their assets, some of their equipment available to local communities as needed. So we're tracking that with our local guy, Mark Foster, who, as I said, is partly funded by the city and also by the federal government.
Right. Now let's talk about how people should stay informed, because certainly we've learned thus far that there's a lot of information that comes around that's not accurate, and information that maybe isn't maliciously put out there, but it's just not founded on fact. So what should people do to get concise, real, factual information? What would you recommend?
Well, the first thing that people can do is go right to our website, our city website, because we've tried to aggregate a lot of information from the federal government and the state government, and our own information about local status of things. So it's beverlyma.gov. On the homepage of the city website, there's a banner across the top of the page, and there's also a big clickable icon. You can click either of those to get right to our COVID-19 information. We have there as well links to the CDC, the Federal Centers for Disease Control, the State Department of Public Health. And as I said, we've got several staff people who are working full time on trying to keep that information up to date. We also are trying to push out information through as many platforms as we can. We have a Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook handle, mybeverly01915. That we're pushing information out to people daily and several times a day. I'm trying to do, every couple of days, one of the Swift 911 calls to give some information over the phone to people. And so, yes, it just, as many ways as we can push it out, but come looking and come sign up for more. The governor also, I know you're looking, but we can go over 30 minutes, can't we? So there's not a lot of other programming to fight with here. The governor has had, just in the last couple of days, made available by text information. People can go onto their phone and to 888-777, they can text COVID-MA, all in caps, and that signs them up for these text alerts from the state government. I did that yesterday, and the first alert I got today was that the governor filed legislation today to move the state income tax deadline to July 15th.
Right.
Now, the legislature needs to pass it, but I'm guessing they will.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that information you can get access to.
Right. So, and we'll put that on our screen for that. And of course, that follows the federal guidelines. Also, the federal income taxes has been pushed back the deadline to July 15th as well. Now, the hours of City Hall. Are you maintaining regular hours? What are they?
So, as I said, we're close to the public, but there's a smaller group of us who are in there working every day. And one of the functions that we're working hard to keep up is the phones. So we have our hours on the website. I don't want to confuse things because the senior center hours are a half hour off the City Hall hours, but generally 8:30 to 4:30 Monday to Wednesday, 8:30 to 7:30 Thursday, 8:30 to 1 Friday.
Okay. And so you're not encouraging people to come to City Hall to transact business, transact it No,
it's closed.
It's closed to the
municipal
public.
Offices as a result of this social distancing.
So let's make sure we're clear on that.
And they're closed for the foreseeable future. The governor's got the schools closed through at least Monday, May 4th, which probably isn't long enough, but at least it's set some expectation.
Yeah, I'm sure
he said we'll reevaluate as we get closer.
Revisit that,
So we're likely to keep City Hall closed as long as we'll be following the governor's lead on that. So we're not opening up to the public to come in the building anytime soon, but we're trying to keep our functionality by phone, by email, by website.
Right. And the senior center, Mike?
Same.
Same thing. Senior center is closed.
Senior center, the libraries, they're all closed.
Yeah. Now, what is the city or the senior center doing? There are a lot of seniors that perhaps live alone.
Absolutely.
Maybe don't have local family. How are we checking to see if they're okay or if they need supplies or groceries? What's being done there?
So our team at the senior center are fantastic, and they are calling regularly to all the seniors who we know, those who are identified, over time have identified themselves as interested in receiving services through the senior center. And so what I'll ask is anybody who feels the need to have somebody to talk with, to check in with, who may be needing help with food or medications or whatnot, they should reach out to us now.
Okay.
And we'll connect with them. If somebody needs a check-in, we'll do that. If somebody just needs someone to talk with, we'll try to provide somebody to do that. It's really important, the longer this goes, that people, particularly people who live alone, know that they're connected with someone.
Yeah,
know that we're paying attention and we're caring about them. We're trying to make sure they have what they need.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah, and I know a lot of restaurants, certainly a lot of your grocery stores are providing home deliveries as well. So the folks, if they don't have a car or they're not quite mobile, they can get their food delivered to their door. Now let's talk the very, very basic. So I'm at home and I start feeling some kind of symptoms. Maybe I start to get a fever. I start to feel congested. I get sweats, chills, and fever, and all that stuff. So what would be the protocol? What should people do? Should they reach out to their primary care provider? Should they go down to a clinic? What's the correct protocol so they don't overwhelm the hospital?
People are being asked to call their primary care physician first, if they're starting to experience symptoms. If somebody's having trouble breathing, if they're getting severe symptoms and they're coming on quickly, then that's when they call 911.
Yeah.
Because if it's an emergency, it's an emergency. For people who are starting to have kind of the onset of more mild symptoms, they should call their primary care doctor first. There are only so many test kits available, so not everybody who shows symptoms will get tested. That's an unfortunate reality of where we are as a country with our access to the equipment. However, what the doctors will say is your treatment wouldn't be any different, right?
Yeah.
If your symptoms are mild and we can't test you, we're still going to say isolate at home. We're going to give you basic directions on how to care for yourself, and then we're going to ask you to kind of let us know if the symptoms get worse. Take care of that.
Who gets tested, or if with limited ones, who makes that decision, and what are the parameters that they look at to say you'll get tested, but you won't?
I think, excuse me. I think right now, from my conversations with the folks at the hospital, people who are inpatient with significant symptoms are getting tested.
Okay, that makes sense.
Healthcare workers who are showing symptoms are getting tested. And I know that with our first responders, if we have concerns with them, we're trying to make sure they get tested.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, let me talk about another topic. The city, of course, conducts meetings, city council meetings, meetings of various committees around the school. Around the city, and we have come up with the city and BevCam have worked to put a program in where the public can actually attend these. I might preface this by saying that the governor did put in an emergency measure that allowed cities to conduct meetings which require open meetings, to have them virtually, meaning the people don't have to sit together, but they can, and also if they can provide a way for the public to look at that. And I know that your city administration reached out to BevCam a few days ago and said, we're having a city council meeting. We're going to use Google Meet. We're going to be remote, but is there some way we can get that on BevCam? So we kind of put our heads together and worked with our consultant and looked at our technology, and we were able to do that so that the people in the meeting were there remotely, and they were talking to each other. And BevCam actually logged into the meeting, and we took that feed and we fed it into our cablecast equipment here in the studio, and we're able to broadcast that live out to Beverly, to the citizens of Beverly. And of course, that's going to be part of the files, our video on demand files that we have of all of our city council meetings. And we have been in contact with your chief of staff, Stephanie Bellotti, indicating that there are other committees and commissions in the city where we will be doing that as well. And and I think that goes to say that, in the 21st century, with all our technology and so forth, that there are ways that we can conduct business and still do things and accomplish things, even though we might be huddled up, hunkered down at home. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, Walt, you and I are baby boomers, and one thing that's going on right now is in 2020, we're being pulled into the present, and I think our friends in the millennial generation are probably happy that we're figuring out how to use technology. So yes, we've had a few meetings and we're figuring out how to do it. We will be thoughtful about what meetings we try to start holding beyond the city council, the school committee. We had a board of health meeting the other day that we did this with as well, because we want to make sure that the public process is sufficient and robust enough, and people really get access to the information they need, both in a meeting and in a public hearing setting. We haven't done a public hearing yet, right? We've done a couple of public meetings. So we're going to work through that together. One good thing is the governor filed legislation the other day, and in that package of municipal relief, one thing was to toll or kind of put on hold the time periods for permits and applications that are before zoning boards of appeal, planning boards, conservation commissions, so that we don't get caught in a position where something gets approved without approving it, right? So that process is important, and we'll be able to kind of just put it on pause while we sort through this before we move forward.
And, along that line, Your Honor, I'd like you to repeat what you said, I think, during the city council meeting, and that is to the effect that, a lot of people have lost their jobs, they don't have an income, and as we know, a lot of people live today paycheck to paycheck, and they might not have enough money to pay their rent. But I think the governor has stipulated that there will be no proceedings against people, evictions for a certain period of time, and even so, the process, the legal process, can't work that fast. And can you repeat kind of and assure our citizens that that's not going to happen to them?
So there's some good information to that end on our website. And we'll try to keep pushing that information out. One thing that Governor Baker has said repeatedly is the courts are closed. Nothing can move forward when the courts are closed. And so any eviction or foreclosure is not happening. And I think in the meantime, both the state and the federal government are working to put further protections in place. And the big stimulus package that passed the U.S. Senate the other night, and I think the House is planning to come in and vote on it. I saw that earlier today. So hopefully that's going to be wrapped up and complete in the next couple of days. There's money that is going to be put out there throughout the country for small business owners, for individuals who lose their jobs, lose their income. And, on a whole number of fronts, both public sector and private sector, we're all working together to try to make sure that people don't get harmed. I saw National Grid is not going to they're not going to pursue any type of shutoffs or procedures for people that can't pay their utility bills for the length of this time. So, all of these different pieces that make up people's financial well-being, we're paying attention to at the local level, at the state, at the federal, and we're trying to get it right. We're trying to make sure that nobody gets harmed. I will say, in addition to that we have a good social safety net in Beverly for people who are in need of food. And those who are in need of food before this started, between Beverly Bootstraps, the Beverly Public Schools, Senior Care, and the Beverly Council on Aging, we're getting meals to people who need them. And then we have the community meals program that all these wonderful volunteer groups in Beverly put out every night. To the extent that people who have not had a need for help with food, start to experience that, please reach out to us. Don't be afraid to ask for help. People need help right now.
Yeah.
This is unprecedented, and so
it surely
if
is, yeah.
you've lost your income stream and you need food, tell us.
Yeah.
We're working hard collectively to make sure that resource is there for people. So that's one reason to reach out to us by phone, by email, through our website, or to any of our community organizations. And again, I can't say it enough. Go to beverlyma.gov. Make sure that you are plugged into the information that we're trying to put out, and tell us what you need, and we'll do everything we can to help you with it.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask you to make a final comment in a second, but first I want to say to our viewers that we are planning to have this conversation with the mayor on a regular basis, perhaps weekly, as necessary, to keep our citizens of Beverly informed on what's going on. And if someone has a specific question and wants to send it via email, I'm sure they can send it to BevCam, admin, A-D-M-I-N, at bevcam.org, or to the city. Where could they send a question that they have?
Send it right to me. I read my emails. My executive secretary, Martha Lewis, reads them. Stephanie Bellotti, chief of staff, reads them. We're if you send it to me, we'll get on it.
Okay.
Mayor Cahill at beverlyma.gov. And so do you want my final comment?
If you could. So let's have your final comments, and please.
So I'll say this. People have been fantastic in Beverly in recognizing the urgency and this kind of singularity of where we are right now. We need to keep focused on keeping our distance from each other. We just have to. And it's going to be like this for a while. It won't be like this forever. We'll get past it. But it's going to be like this for a while, and we need to keep a focus on that. We will do everything we can to share information out and to listen to you as you tell us what you need. We're concerned for everyone's emotional well-being, because it's a challenge. We're concerned for everybody's financial well-being. And again, right back to the beginning, we know that we need to do everything we can to keep people physically safe and healthy. It will make a difference. We'll save lives by doing this. And I'm so grateful for the wonderful community that we have and all that work that people are doing right now.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
Well, I just want to say I think the city is blessed to have a chief executive as caring as you are, sir. And I'd like to remind our viewers that you have been watching City Scene with Mayor Mike Cahill. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski, and we'll see you next time.